Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking NIS2 Compliance, How Identity Security Ensures Regulatory Readiness. I'm Manuela Ollhäuser, Marketing Manager at IC Consult. Our two speakers today are Frank Schmering, Senior Solutions Engineer at Saviynt, and Dr. Ulrich Domröse, Senior Vice President of Enterprise Identity Management at IC Consult. Yeah, and now look forward to their presentation. And Frank, I hand over to you now.
Thank you. What you will learn in this particular session, understanding the NIS2 requirements to gain some insights into the directive, some key aspects, while the role of the identity security is one of the fundamental part of the NIS2 requirements. While then going into the product-related topics on utilizing Saviynt's Enterprise Identity Cloud, which can discover what kind of functionality the Enterprise Identity Cloud can deliver in order to meet the NIS2 requirements, while then covering strategy for reaching the compliance, being NIS2 ready, as well as some actionable steps for the organization in general. Looking into the topics, NIS2 has been published by the European Union as of December 2022, got into force on January 23, while the predecessor NIS1 was active, and NIS2 is just the extension with an extended scope of the NIS directive in general, around including verticals and economies around postal and courier services, wastewater management, digital services, digital service providers, and many additional verticals that we are currently discussing and that we have seen in the NIS2 directive in general. And one of the main topics that the NIS2 directive is requesting. Uli, do you want to share some insights?
Yeah, that's not only that you have to keep some special regulations which are described, and we will have an extra slide for this. Also, these companies have to report any kind of security incident. And that means that they have to inform the government or a special country-related organization immediately within 24 hours after having recognized the threat, and also 72 hours after this, they have to send a report which brings detailed information about what has been recognized and how it has been remediated. And 1 month after the security incident, a detailed report has to be built to describe what happened, how it could happen, and what were the actions which have been taken to avoid further damage. That's very hard restrictions, and the time to react is very short, and therefore it's very important that you have the right measures in your company established to avoid misleadings of the reporting and also of the things which might happen. Maybe you go to the next slide. So what are the real directives which are given in NIS2? It's described in Article 21, and the main points which are mentioned there are on this slide. So you have to establish a risk management which will enable you to either recognize and then react on any kind of security incident. You have to have an incident handling mechanism which ensures that reporting and actions to avoid damage will directly start. You have to ensure that all incidents which might happen will not directly have an impact on the business continuity. You have to ensure that this also is valid for your complete supply chain, including your vendors or other companies which are delivering some kind of services for your own company. We will come to this later on. Of course, you have to have zero trust architecture, which is also established in the network architecture so that the security can be kept within the network itself. You have to establish policies, procedures, and regulations to ensure that if somebody is able to breach in, will not be able to do so much things inside your company network because not having enough rights, and to ensure that the breach cannot be done very easily, you have to use cryptography and encryption methods, and especially multi-factor authentication to access any kind of system or data. Let's go to the next slide. So here we are just showing some kind of actions which you have to take. I don't want to encounter everything which is mentioned on this slide. It shows that several measures have to be taken inside your company to fulfill the regulations. For risk management, it's very clear that this is more organizational. But let's say for incident handling or policies and procedures, an IAM system can help you in automize the steps which have to be taken to ensure that all the regulations will be kept. And therefore, it's very important to have an IAM system or an IGA system in place. Having said that, going to the next slide, I would like to hand back to you, Frank.
And as you already indicated, Uli, there are 6-7 key domains that the NIS2 directive touches: identity governance, administration related topics. And while covering within this webinar all the topics, that will just burst the time. So we are going to concentrate on some key topics, primarily around the supply chain security, on dealing with external identities, which is one of the main topics that the NIS2 directive states as a necessary measure in order to implement the necessary processes and get the management of the entire supply chain being managed. And hence why, Oli, not only MFA is being necessary and the reporting, what else?
Yeah, you have to take several actions for securing your session management. It's the way how the session is established. So it's for sure a good idea to use a PEM tool. You have to have recordings and logs in place to be able to find out what has happened inside the session. If it will come out that the session was established by the wrong person or an intruder. And you should also check that workflows are in place to directly react on whatever will happen. For example, if you recognize that somebody is accessing your systems, that you're directly able to throw him out. And of course, all these things have to happen directly in time so that you can react on intrusions or threat detection exactly when you notice it. And therefore, you need some kind of systems which will, on one side, monitor, and on the other side, react on what you recognize inside your network if it's not expected.
Which is relevant because of what, Uli?
What do you mean, which is relevant?
Since getting the recordings in place, we are talking about data residency, we are talking about workers' council.
Yeah. So it's very important that if something has happened inside your network, or which kind of security incident has happened, it's very important to find out what really happened, how you can avoid it, and how much damage could be affected by the intrusion, and therefore the recordings and the logs either have to be written and of course then have to be analyzed to exactly find out what has happened and how it can be avoided in the future. And that means that you need correct actions for creation of each kind of object, also the session and the identities which are used, which kind of accesses they use, and how the deletion can directly take place if, for example, an employee leaves the company or an external person is no longer working for the partner you are expecting.
And that is exactly the bridge, Uli. Yeah? The external person no longer working for a certain company, where else this company is within the supply chain as an external contractor at a particular company. And hence why the NIS2 directive talks also primarily around the supply chain security. And when there is a European Union directive and which talks about risk management measures, the directive also talks about fines, right? Penalties. And the penalties are more sophisticated and have been exposed from the NIS2 regulations on getting fines up to 10% of the company's annual turnover. This is being divided into important entities and what we'll see later on, essential entities. For important entities, at least 1.4% or a maximum of 7 million as a fine will be fined towards any kind of findings and any kind of breaches, and for essential entities, 2% of the annual worldwide turnover or up to 10 million on revenue will be fined. And for the NIS2 directive, for the different verticals that we have seen up front, for every company having more than 50 employees, this directive needs to be met on all the different security domains that we initially discussed. While the effective date when the NIS2 directive will be alive, will get active, is October the 17th this year. So less than 8 months until the directive is being live from the European Union and here from the local government. Now, what role of identity security has a certain role in achieving NIS2 compliance? Primarily talking about the external identities, supply chain security, and why should it be a focus for me as a company? Why should it be a focus for me as an organization? Nowadays, we'll see that we talk a lot about processes. Why are these problems exacerbated when dealing with external identities or third parties in a general way on complying with the NIS2 directive? Internal employees have specific processes to onboard and offboard, most of them which are handled centrally by the human resources department and managed by an HCM solution, so that the internal employees will get access to dedicated systems. This is a standardized process nowadays. While looking on the supply chain itself, external identities, external resources like brokers, contractors, contingent workers, temporary workers, season workers, varies because of the business. Businesses have their own needs. Business units have their own needs towards different external suppliers, external identities. And this process varies often with not defined or well-documented processes to onboard on or intake identity information that involve varied contributors within the business, most of whom have day jobs or time bomb jobs with a certain time frame that don't involve managing non-employee life cycle. These life cycles are pretty much, as you can see, spaghetti untangled, so to speak, related to the different business units that we'll see. And also through IDC and a variety of different other reports, 60% of the companies do not know on how many external users they explicitly have. 49% out of those have experienced a breach caused by a third party. And Uli, nowadays, while talking about supply chain security, we are not talking about regular processes for onboarding related to the different vertical. You'll have the interaction with a lot of additional processes towards background checks, training requirements, identity verification, maintaining policy acceptance, while then performing the credentialing, maintaining, uploading documents, a copy of driver license or external professional certifications, etc. are one of the key topics. Immunization requirements, another. Integration of learning management solutions to confirm a certain training that I've been through. It would make sense to combine everything with a single solution. All the learning management integration, identity proofing, background checks, the third-party risks from external vendors, from external identities needs to be negotiated nowadays, since the directive talks about risk management measures. What about contract management? Do I know that the external who's currently working my project has still a valid contract? So contract management solutions needs to be integrated, needs to be within the process as well, while reporting is a tremendous part of the NIS2 directive, as Uli already indicated. And everything needs to be integrated and automated nowadays with a single solution. Looking on third-party vendors, on the spend on third-party organizations has now surpassed more than 3.6 trillion US dollars. And the third-party workforce is increasing constantly due to business critical work or processes where some roles are not being equipped with internal workforces anymore. On the other side, you have the digital crowd sprawl. My on-prem lift and shift to the cloud adoption, cloud transformation that needs to be managed as well. Across financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, public sector, any kind of supply chain. And the logic at the end of the day for the transformation is embedded within the network of the relationships. Talking about the organizational relationship towards legal, towards sourcing, contract management. And there was a section, a question already, is insurance also part of the NIS2 directive? Yes, insurance vertical is part of the NIS2 directive. And half of the breaches are linked to third parties. There are a variety of different sources where you can see, for example, the Facebook breach or the recent Octopus breach has been caused by an external supplier. as you can see on the left-hand side, Volkswagen says data breach at vendor impacted 3.3 million people in North America. SolarWind hackers are targeting the global IT security chain, Microsoft says. And the attack vector is increasing as more and more organizations are relying on the external suppliers, on external identities. 80% of the breaches involve access misuse or compromised passwords. 50% of those attacks are caused by cloud security failures, misconfigured workloads, for example. 49% of the companies have experienced in general breaches caused by external parties, by a vendor. And this drives the average cost for a particular breach. But how can Saviynt Enterprise Identity Cloud help you to comply now and meet the NIS2 requirements within your organization through its various features around the cybersecurity space that Saviynt is offering? Now, you've seen through Uli's discussion already the complexity, the different domains that the NIS2 directive is touching. And you'll see the complexity challenge that you have from within your organization. You have a current IGA system in place. There is a PAM infrastructure, a governance, risk, and compliance solution, an ITSM solution, and maybe a third-party management solution where you deal with already existing invitations or management of external identities. Now, those applications require each and every access to particular target applications, connections for maintenance, and having multiple integrations to downstream and target applications and endpoints. Now, in regards to reporting and shareability, portions of the applications need to exchange data, and that integrating among the different identity technologies, whether it's PAM, IGA, plus GRC, plus an ITSM solution. On the other side, you have your internal employee base, different personas. You have the end users, the business line users, managers, compliance owners, external auditors, application owners, as well as the administrators who requires access to each and every product, each and every page solution at the end of the day, which makes it rather complex. And this requires deployment and the maintenance and the knowledgeability of administrators, for example, for each and every individual solution. Same with offering multiple UIs to your end users, which significantly raises the TCO at the end of the day. With Saviynt, there is the converged identity platform, which simplifies all of this. One platform to deploy and maintain the converged capabilities available to build comprehensive identity solutions and integrations. Supports multiple capabilities, including privileged access management and application governance, risk, and compliance, while also easily integrating with existing identity solutions if necessary. Saviynt Enterprise Identity Cloud reduces the burden on end users to learn and access multiple solutions, as you have seen earlier on. And Saviynt reduces the number of the administrators being required, if necessary. No need to build integrations among the different capabilities within the platform. One single connector for different purposes to the target application, whether it's SAP, AWS, Azure, and others, which you see on the right-hand side, which lowers automatically the total cost of ownership. And it's way simpler to deploy and scale into more complex infrastructure as a comprehensive solution for maturing and applying and meeting the NIS2 regulations and directive. With the ability to deploy Saviynt and have it hosted on AWS, Azure, where the data is entirely isolated, instant as a multi-tenant solution, and reporting, as you can see it, is one of the core fundamentals, driving the visibility with the identity warehouse that we are offering, which includes privileged activities around identities, entitlements, external vendor onboarding, and external identity onboarding. Strategies for the compliance to understand the practical strategies. Nowadays, we are talking about a variety of different supply chains. As we established earlier, most of the companies underestimate on how many external populations are accessing their network. There could be any number of reasons. Maybe the vendor contract is managed out of one department, but the individual users are onboarded by someone else. What external users are you most concerned about? Different business units require different supply chains, which are visualized over here towards the requirements of third parties, business partners, as well as individuals. With the Saviynt EIC solution for external identity and risk management, customers can gain greater control over non-employee lifecycle processes, as well as an added sense of confidence in the accuracy of all user identity data. The platform also provides a central collaboration hub to improve internal as well as external stakeholders collaboration, making sure that the process is properly aligned. The entity enablement drives the risk-based policies, reduce the friction, while allowing a secure user onboarding capability with automated workflows, while I'll drive a continuous compliance capability monitoring within the entire process for reliable accesses, for reliable processes. With the help of delegated administration and later on the necessary offboarding. Now, Uli, how does the user onboarding process support the fulfillment of the NIS2 requirements?
Yeah, it could be that the external user who is managing other external users has been stolen and taken over by a threat who tries to misuse it. And it would also be possible that he does not directly use this user for his breach. He would create another user to hide a little bit more what he wants to do. So if you have an automized procedure on the onboarding process, first of all, you keep the least privileged principle. So that means that everybody is only allowed to do what he should do, and therefore it would directly come out if you try to give more rights to a person who should not be allowed to do something which other externals are not allowed to do. Additionally, the automation of creating a user will avoid that you can access rights which you should not have, because birthright rules and all other things would be assigned automatically, and therefore there's no manual interaction where somebody can take over the control. The process is audited and also logged by the engine, and therefore you can also find out what has happened afterwards. So if you think that something is going wrong, you can see who has created that user and what were the rights which were assigned, and are these all the rights which have to be assigned by the birthright rules. And if this is not the case, you could provide to give him the rights. So by using these functionalities, it's ensured that it's difficult for a threat to take over a user and give him so many rights that he's able to really damage something inside your network. The only thing he can do is what the externals can do, and that's just smaller part of responsibility, and therefore it would avoid to create a high damage inside your network.
Thank you, Uli. You mentioned reporting compliance. Which role plays then the continuous compliance monitoring and access control policies a pivotal role? Like one of the risk management measures you talked about earlier of the NIS2 directive.
Yeah, so we have two problems. One is that the number of breaches is really increasing, and therefore, if you want to avoid to be breached, you need more people to monitor what's going on, or you do it automatically. But if you have a system who monitors everything which takes place inside the environment, it's ensured that everything will be corrected. So if you recognize that rights are assigned in a system which are not affected by the IAM or IGA system, you can automatically take away these rights and therefore create the real situation, how it should look like and what is ensured before. So that would lead to a more hygiene platform. And the second thing is that the time on which you have to react on somebody of something is very short, because if an intrusion takes place, the threat will go in and will try to create a big damage in a very short time. So it's very crucial that you detect this very quickly and then can take the right actions. So if you have a continuous compliance tool in place, which will look onto the complete environment in time and absolutely each second of operation, it's very easy to find out that something is going on which seems to be abnormal, and then directly react on it, maybe by disabling the account and then asking an administrator to ensure that the things which have happened might be right, so that if it was not an intrusion, the administrator can manually give back the rights. And by doing this, it's ensured that the time frame between recognizing something which seems to be abnormal and a reaction on the system is very, very short, and therefore the threat or the intruder does not have a lot of time to create damage.
Thanks for the answer. Appreciate it. Informative. Since why the NIS2 directive requires a secure management and a proper process on dealing with vendor onboarding, right? On tackling the entire supply chain security. While, as you outlined, Uli, talking about the delegated administration, while the end of the day is the automated and full lifecycle management capabilities. And that is exactly where the external user management product and solution from Saviynt comes in, talking about the secure onboarding, leveraging supplier management solution, procurement add-ons to and solutions, or CMDB on retrieving and consolidating the necessary vendors that are working for me, while then being able to simplify the vendor registration according to workflows, which drives then automatically the ability to delegate the identity onboarding, profiling and ownership into the external vendor, because I don't know if Hans Müller, for example, is still working in the external company as a consultant working on one of my projects, and the entire delegated administration, ensuring the compliance throughout what you said, Uli, driving the assured compliance through the entire process while building out these secure processes and having these security policies in place, adopting the life cycle management of external identities is a fundamental part, right? Well, not only talking about the different verticals on securing the identity onboarding and ensuring the compliance based on risk evaluation from each and every external identity towards the external supplier. This drives also in a periodic access review, for example, and reporting alerts, what you initially outlined, the immediate detection if something is occurring, which reduces at the end of the day the entire initiative, the cost without losing the control within the business. Do you agree, Oli?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the full life cycle management, having a trusted vendor scoring, security scoring, risk scoring in place, being able to onboard identities, where I can easily go through merger and acquisition scenarios in order to maintain organizational hierarchies of a certain supplier, cascading maybe changes to particular identities, while also considering the entire termination. Because do I know at the end of the day if people are still working at the external supplier because they are still existing in my my environment? So termination of relationships, ending of contracts is automatically resulting in the termination of the access these particular identities have within my business. And that is one of the key fundament to have the entire process being secured and audited in a proper way, while ensuring the compliance levels towards it. Different frameworks, and actually we need to add the NIS2 regulations on the control frameworks as well. And it's not only the NIS2 directive, there are other directives talking about external user management, ISO 27035 and 36, for example, CIS talking about it, the validation checks, the master data management, the typical identity access and identity governance and administration related capabilities towards access requests, access approvals. Who do I control it? How do I control it? And the entire validation behind it, while driving the entire assure compliance towards the different compliance frameworks, the monitoring and of each and every access request, access certification, and possibly segregation of duty violations that may occur, which enables customers with the external user management on collaborating with external partners, vendors, and contractors, different identity types within the supply chain vertical, reduce the risk across the remote workforce, streamlining and simplifying the identity onboarding, identity verification, and governance processes with one single solution and not siloed approaches, making sure that external organizations and identities are still relevant for me, still are contracted within the business for me, to consolidate the entire visibility that a particular identity has within the organization, and that onto with a single platform. Now, Oli, actionable steps for organizations. Receiving guidance on assessing the current compliance levels, primarily around the NIS2 directive, identifying maybe the gaps and implementing necessary measures to align with the NIS2 regulations, would result in what that Saviynt Enterprise Identity Cloud will look on the business partners, on the external vendors, contractors, contingent workers, the different identity types that we initially discussed, which have access to a variety of different systems to address those key related questions. Who has access to what? Is the access being used appropriately? And what does the access secure at the end of the day? And building a foundation for, what is the foundation for building a solid third-party strategy? There are 4 guiding principles that we recommend companies keep a focus on while developing their approaches and programs to meet the NIS2 requirements. The ultimate goal is to assign the right access for the right amount of time safely. Along the way, you want to focus on the user, both the third-party organization and the third-party user, with a user-friendly experience, with a user-friendly user interface. Of course, user acceptance will be driven by the efficiency. Increases that come from automation and efficiency is also improved by reducing the overhead required to be continuously compliant, because it's automatically built in. Let's take a look at the critical capabilities to well-defined third-party access governance solutions. First thing is the vendor management, the external company onboarding and management. How do I get it into the platform contract database? How do I make sure to align, and how do I make sure that it is still a valid external supplier, external vendor, based on vendor policy management, on policies, the ability to perform the third-party user management, general user management. There are multiple gateways for onboarding, leveraging the Azure B2B invitation capabilities. Saviynt has its own invitation-based approaches. Do I offer a self-service portal for identity onboarding? Or do I delegate that into the external vendor, that I specify one of the main guys responsible for the project, the PMO of the external vendor, for the identity onboarding of those externals, with workflows, with risk awareness related to the identity onboarding, but also allowing the continuous recertification capabilities and policy management aligned to that, while driving automatically the compliance. With Saviynt, we are bringing all the third-party accesses under compliance through the 360-degree view visibility on who has access to what and how is the access being used. And we're mitigating the security risk in the entire ecosystem, especially nowadays with the digital permission sprawl and cloud adoption, digital transformation, enforcing the on-prem compliance controls, not only on-prem, but also spread into the cloud. And that with a converged governance, making sure that the lifecycle management is fully covered, fully managed, continuously controlled and measured, but then concentrating also on capabilities that external identities will get privileged accesses within my organization. With a single pane of glass, driving the full visibility into the ecosystem, and the governance of the necessary access rights and risks, as well as the risks around the identity itself. These are the core functions of the external user management solution that we initially discussed, plus the advanced capabilities around access recertification, succession management, and the control termination processes. Uli, did I forget something?
No, I think you covered it very well. At least I would say, I think there's one slide at the end, which means that I think we described that cybersecurity is a top management issue because the C-level functionalities are responsible for keeping the NIS2 directive, and therefore it's very important that it's directly an issue which has to be pressed into the company by the top management, and they have to be aware that they have to do something. Enforcement is key because automating your risk and incident processes leads to the fact that everything is in a correct state as you managed it inside your system. It will be automated, it will be monitored, it will be logged, and it cannot be misused, and therefore it will enforce keeping your policies as you described it. And therefore IAM and TPAC are key to support you in fulfilling these requirements inside your company and fulfilling the regulations by using the system mechanisms of Saviynt and their platform. Frank, would you say that this concludes everything what you said before?
Absolutely. With that, any questions?
I see some questions here on the board. So the first one is very easy. What about the slides which you have seen? We will send the slides afterwards to all participants, so you don't have to take pictures or screenshot it. We will deliver it to you as a PDF document. Second question, is insurance sector concerned by NIS2, Frank?
If I'm not mistaken, yes, absolutely. Insurance, the entire supply chain dealing with externals is also part of the directive.
Yeah, I would also say it is. Especially, I've never seen an insurance which is smaller than 50 people, and therefore they are all included.
Correct.
Next question is also, yeah.
What are the requirements for NIS2 if the entity is in scope for DORA? Does DORA take priority, Uli?
Yeah, DORA is nothing which is in contradiction to NIS2. DORA has some additional requirements which have to be fulfilled, but I would say that DORA and NIS2 are at least two sides of a medal. Yeah, so they are just two views on how you look onto something. DORA includes special requirements for risk management, measurements which you have to take in risk management. It has additional requirements to the incident management if something has happened. It adds some parts to handling the third-party risk, which is already mentioned in NIS2, but for DORA you have to take a little bit more awareness of it. And it also has requirements on how you test your environment, not just waiting that somebody breaches you, but also finding out where you may have weak points, and therefore you have to test more things. So DORA is not in contradiction to NIS2, and DORA and NIS2 together brings you to a complete high level of security inside your company. So therefore, you cannot say that one or the other is taking priority. If you have to fulfill DORA as well, that means at least that for sure you have to fulfill the requirements of NIS2. Therefore, they are going hand in hand.
Now, Uli, when is NIS2 being transposed into national law in Germany?
I think that's something which you already mentioned at the beginning. And there's a special law in Germany, which name I cannot directly say now. That's that it's a German Umsetzungsgesetz, where it's described what has to be done, especially in Germany, and where are the locations and the governance parts where you have to send your incident reports to, but the date is the one which you mentioned in the beginning, which was October this year. And additionally, there are some refinements in the German law who describe a little bit more what the NIS2 means for keeping it in Germany. Umsetzungsgesetz, I think the correct name is Umsetzungsgesetz.
That's correct, yeah, and that will also bridge the next question. Will NIS2 be the same in every European country? Yes, it will. The European Union has submitted and published that directive, and each and every country is now responsible in putting that down to a local law. Depending on the time when the law will get into effect. But each and every European country needs to do it, needs to incorporate the directive in a way or another. Absolutely. And the last question that I have is there any plan for additional presentations on the other aspects of NIS2 and how the Saviynt solution can support it? Good question. We are working on that. Check soon the communication coming from Saviynt and IC Consult.
Perfect. Thank you. If any other questions in course, so please feel free to still type it in. We can also answer them after the webinar. Then, yeah, if no other questions are coming, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Uli and Frank, for the great presentation. Here are the contact details. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. And yeah, having said that, I wish you a great rest of the day and thank you for participating.